is that Garrick will be sharing a short presentation about what they do in respect to the creating shared value in practice in the Hong Kong context for Nan Fung development. And we will open it up to obviously with the expertise and the perspectives of both Zoel and Prof. Carlo. With that, I will pass it to Zoel. I think you have a video, but I will pass it to you first. We're trying this out, this format out. If it works out, we can do more of this going forward. But thank you everyone for joining.
All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone, and thank you, Philo, for actually getting us together to learn from one another. I would say that it's a blessing for MySDG Academy to co-host this webinar. And thank you everyone who joined us this afternoon. A little bit background of MySDG Academy. We work on the foundation of APPGM SDG by working with Member of Parliaments in localizing of SDG. At the present moment, we are working with 159 of Member of Constituency, over 222 in Malaysia. We work with over 1,000 of partners and 1,300 projects on the ground. Anyhow, we really lack of the the connection with the private sector yet. If you are aware about the helix model innovations, you need the private sector academicians. Like, we are glad to have Mr. Leong here. Mr. Leong is the president of UCSI for the sustainability, and many others, some of the academicians. We work with academicians as well. And of course, we are a platform ecosystem for civil society organizations. But we are lacking of the connections with private sector, and therefore last year we started to engage with more private sector. And this year, gladfully, with Philo's support and also suggestions, we have this opportunity to really learn from someone from the industry. And I do believe that today we can a small group, and therefore we can have in-depth discussions and see what is the potential for the future. So thank you for Prof. Carlo to be here as well, a very prominent I would say leaders in the Philippines that helping us to develop the ASEAN network. Okay, so
Yes.
thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good. I know Zoel will show us short slide as the people start coming in, but I totally forgot to mention that first and foremost, thank you for Zoel to agreeing to host Garrick here. Initially, just a short conversation between Garrick and myself, and then I said, oh, maybe Zoel can help, and Zoel has kindly offered to show Garrick around, and also another site visit. But I'm very excited to. I think there's a video that Zoel will show, and hopefully. The participants online and offsite, on-site and online, we can ask questions in the chat box. But let's try to learn from each other, because it's a good opportunity for to see what can transpire with these types of exchanges. With that, Zoel, over to you. I think you have a video to show.
You play the ASEAN. Okay, we will play a short ASEAN videos. Then you showcase that some of the works that we have done. We are organizing ASEAN SDG-SSE conference yearly. This year is take the lead by Philippines, together with Dr. Ben, take the lead together with Prof. Carlo. The ASEAN conference is next week, 20th and 21. But this is a video of last year. Okay. A very warm welcome to all our participants to this ASEAN SDG-SSE Forum 2025. This forum is more than just an event. It is a space for friendship, exchanging knowledge, and co-creating solutions for the community we care and we love. Over the next 2 days, it will be very rich and purposeful journey ahead. Our main focus will be developed of the ASEAN SDG-SSE Roadmap 2026 and 2030.
I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to APPGM SDG and MySDG Academy for its kind invitation to the Ministry of Economy to be part of Asian SDG-SSE Forum 2025. This roadmap aims to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into the principles of social and solidarity economy, creating a collective vision of a future shaped by equality, sustainability, and shared prosperity.
realize there is a lot of challenges that we have, particularly in ASEAN. There is no clear policy of the SSE in many ASEAN countries. This is the momentum that the ASEAN Solidarity Economic Council declared, that this initiative of the SSE agenda should reach the ASEAN summit and accepted by the ASEAN countries. This is our roadmap. The CSO cannot do by ourselves for promoting this. We have to collaborate together because SDGs goals is not the governmental target. This is our targets, people target.
Why are we here? And what do we seek to achieve over these 2 days? We want to build friendship and solidarity among ASEAN partners. We're here to learn from each other, especially tonight. 19 groups presenting same time, over 5 switches. Key is we want to develop a plan for ASEAN SDG-SSE acceleration. And also for ASEAN, it's very significant that this year at the VNR, 5 of the core ASEAN partners are presenting their reports.
ASEAN has the 5th largest GDP in the world, and we should make use of it to encourage and influence governments and people to work regionally together and support one another.
Should be the center, we should provide the compass or direction. So we influence decision. Now that's advocacy.
Actually, we have moved beyond simply identifying issues. For far too long, our regional conversations have been centered on what's wrong, what should be done, and to a certain extent finding faults with each other. We have to walk the talk. Rest assured, I think with the momentum, with the commitment, with the energy that I'm feeling, I personally feel from this room today, from the crowd today, I think we can actually move the agenda together.
SDG-SSE.
So as briefly mentioned just now, our organization do localization of SDG. We do research, we do micro solution projects for long-term and short-term. We work with multi-stakeholders, embracing SDG 17. And also now we are entering in the phase to work with private sectors and also ASEAN partners. And this is a good opportunity to learn from you, all of you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Zoel. So my brief introduction to Garrick is that I've known him for more than 10 years already. He has been in the, well, let me just add a few more people in. He has been in this, he has been in the space, both in the private sector, also the public sector, and also the NGO as well. Before he went to his current role, he was also the CEO of Junior Achievement, which I think is present around Asia as well. So the concept of youth, the concept of not youth, the sector and focus on youth, and also the engagement collaboration with corporates, and also with NGO and the government is something that he has had experiences with. So when he mentioned that he will be in KL this week to speak at a conference hosted by the CAPS, mentioned to him that this is a good opportunity for him to get to learn in one go what's happening in the Malaysian space, and Zoal has kindly accepted to doing that. The topic title we chose as Creating Shared Value is a concept that was adapted by Harvard Business School Professor Michael Porter. And I think more than 10 years ago, he was in Hong Kong to be the keynote speaker for the Hong Kong Jockey Club's Philanthropy for Better Cities conference, which myself and also my teammates have produced. But on the back of his visit to Hong Kong, I remember clearly that the Hong Kong government was very interested to see how shared value as a concept, as a framing method, can enable other sectors to participate. I think someone else is on mute. Someone else is speaking. Okay.
Can hear.
Can someone turn off that?
No
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. So that framing has then been more mainstreamed and more popularized. But Nan Fung Development is one of the organizations that continue to operationalize this, and it's great. When I heard that Garrick is doing this, it's actually great for him to share his experiences in how to operationalize that, and hopefully through his sharing, the participants in the room as well as online can see what are the relevance in Hong Kong, Philippines, and also Malaysia, possibly in other countries within ASEAN, can adapt and potentially learn from that, because that is a journey, and the framing that hopefully other organizations and other sectors can learn from that. And Carlo can also speak to that from the Philippines context. With that, I'll pass it to Garrick. He has a few slides that he will share, but hopefully we can use this as an opportunity for Garrick and Zoal and Carlo to ask each other questions as to Garrick's experiences here, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah,
Garrick, over to you.
Philo, for the also very kind introduction. Also, I asked for a coffee chat, and Philo always exceed expectation and connect me with so well, and I'm really thankful for this occasion to arrange that we doing. I really consider this as, because the time is just 1 hour maybe, but as an initial, we get to know each other for the first time, and then I'm sure there will be a lot we can talk about individually afterwards. We can follow up with LinkedIn, on Teams, on Zoom anytime. I think this is just the beginning. So thank you very much for the kind arrangement. My slide is showing. So okay,
it's screen share now. It's good. It says there's a lag right now, but it should be okay.
And now you see my slide. I only have like 10 slides, so don't worry. It's not a lecture. It's now you can see this slide, actually introduction to Nan Fung, where we as a real estate conglomerate, we started in the 1950s in Hong Kong as a yarn manufacturer. So at some point we are the largest yarn manufacturer in Asia, and you see this is our heritage, our factory in Tsuen Wan in Hong Kong. Now this building is being, as Philo and also Carlos also visited, it's being revitalized into a 3 components building: museum, co-working space, and also shop floor. So there are a lot of cultural happenings and also innovation events. We also have a venture capital attached to this building's operation. So there's a lot of social innovation we are trying in this building. This revitalization happened like 7 or 8 years ago. But now we also scale up that to other larger scale properties. So this is the heritage building. When you come to Hong Kong, let me know. We'll show you around. And now, next page, please. And now we have evolved into 3 main business streams. Property development is our main business. We have we own and operate more than 100 buildings, mainly in Hong Kong. And also we have buildings in Boston, New York, Shanghai, London, Guangzhou, etc. Besides property, we also have business in life science and also financial investment. So this is the current footprint of our company. Next.
Maybe Garrick, you can talk about
I can continue to talk about it. Actually, next slide showing that where we have properties in different locations, as I just mentioned, as beyond Hong Kong, and we have Shanghai, Guangzhou, Boston, London, and also on New York properties. Okay, so for my role is on sustainability and shared value. So like many corporates, you can see there would be slogans or strategic pillars that for guiding the sustainability development of each company. So for us, it's the same. We have this framework called SOWIT. So sewing also is like resembling how our heritage and our legacy.
Textiles.
SOWIT is 5 strategic pillar acronyms. Next slide, please. In terms of social cohesion, environment, wellness, innovation, and technology. So this is the guiding framework for Nan Fung as a sustainability framework. Okay, next slide. This framework is very boring, but I think most importantly today, I want to share with you how we define and perceive the evolution of sustainability frameworks in corporations. What needs to be changed, what needs to be focused at the present very controversial ESG's roles in corporate. You'll see a lot of restructuring in the ESG teams all throughout Asia and the Western and in American companies. So for us, from the left, companies like us, we have guiding values, mottos from founders that would guide us to try to marry profit and impact in our operation. So these are the values that have a legacy that continues as different generations of the owners would carry on this legacy. And same for many family-owned offices in Hong Kong. And next, we have the framework that I just mentioned that among a lot of the priorities in impact, what would be the priorities for our company? What would be the materiality for us? And so there's the framework. And then downstream, how these framework being translated into actions, policies, training, reporting, accountability committees. OKR is objective and key result, our KPIs. How these will translate into how we do things is the culture part. And this culture has happened 2 to 3 years in the company culture transformation. And to the latest status, we would ask all our colleagues to think sustainability, and we call SOWIT, as a service. That means how we can focus on using sustainability and impact to formulate new business, new products, new solutions, either bring revenue, either saving costs or improving efficiency. Because there are limitless social impact issues, but there are limited resources. So for us as a conglomerate, as a business, which area we would focus on to help us be sustainably bringing profit and impact together. And that's the ask for all our colleagues right now. SOWIT as a service. So there are different examples, and I would like to use this Prof. I'll share 2 examples, but the first one I'll use this Prof to try to share with you what's our thinking in this SOWIT as a service initiative. You may recognize this. This is a door hanger. When you travel in hotels, it's very common that you have these kind of door hangers. And these days, not just the do not disturb door hanger, right? There may be another door hanger. You can see us saying that, oh, you may want to skip the room clean. If you want to skip the room clean, you hang this outside the door, right? And this type of practice, I think have been in the hotel industry for some time. Either the skip towel cleaning or skip room clean or skip other services that they committed and then ask you to be green, because you can imagine they can save costs if you skip a room clean and towel, etc. But in this problem, you can see in the middle, there is a recent, these 2 to 3 years, a new innovation, a small innovation that makes this engagement much more effective. In the middle, you can see there is a 100 rewards point each day. I think this has become more common in these 2 to 3 years in the service industry, because they know that if there are no incentive, there is the engagement, the usage of this opt-out service would be very limited. And they found this is a simple, understandable value sharing. It's a shared value scheme. Then a lot more people will utilize this and align with the hotel owners to save costs, to save energy, to save water, to save manpower. So this is kind of the value sharing and value transfer like this. So this is a small thing. But if you think if we operate 100 billion, there are other bigger companies operate a lot more facilities and a lot of workflow, a lot of resources using day by day. If you pile that up, it will be huge. If you talk to a real estate company, if there are 4%, 5% saving in all across their portfolio, it's really already a very huge number. So what our team is doing is when we manage our buildings, first the bottom of the pyramid, we think of are there ways that there are wastage? Are there things that we can add on services related to impact and sustainability? And after we have formulated this service, we focus on those that the impact can be quantified and measured. Why we want to measure that? Because after we have the mechanism to quantify and measure, we can deduce the token or the value or the currency to be transformed and shared among those who are partner, who are together in the value chain that contribute to that savings. Not just the landlord or the funder or one party that capitalize all the savings, but it's being shared. We find those conversion mechanism, then a lot of the parties in the value chain would be willing to participate, and that would induce those behavioral change. So you can see on the top right of this slide, we are formulating that. It's called a net positive lease. It's actually a landlord-tenant engagement program, and like a CRM. We have management fee rebate, we have points rebate that induce our tenants, our commercial tenants, to do any kind. There are like 8 to 10 different kinds of add-on service. Maybe this time is carbon audit. Next time is waste management AI audit. Next time is staff wellness curation. Next time is social impact measurement and learning. So these different types of add-on services, when we quantify, and there we find this shared value scheme, and then it will induce an engagement. And sometimes we talk about scope 3, decarbonization, scope 3, social impact. And then these are not directly only controlled by the funder or the corporates. These type of shared value scheme is what we think is the next step we must formulate in order to align and induce behavioral change across the value chain. So this is the first part first examples that we think about from sustainability as a service. The second example is about social impact measurement and social value. And around 3 to 4 years, me and Crystal, we are being asked by our management how to assess the effectiveness of the social investment that across our properties, across our foundations. There are a lot of continuing programs. So how do we decide where to invest in and what's the effectiveness and how to assess the progress of each program? So we learn from the UK market, we learn from the Hong Kong market, we learn from the Asian market, how they use SRI, or in UK they use the TOM system, how different system can help us bring a more simplified mechanism so that we can assess our internal program, also our external investment. And then eventually we have 2 colleagues having the social value international certified practitioner social value qualification. And also we start to measure our own programs, and also we start to measure our tenants program. And eventually we start now offer these services to other corporates and also other NGOs that we work with. And the most important thing is not they have the number just on the report. Most important that in Hong Kong, they are still lacking the evidence-based mindset to evaluate each social programs, and also the accountability and also the learning is also still very lacking. There are no open source data, etc. And when we want to change that, so we are not directly advocating for in think tanks or for the government policies, but within Nan Fung's ecosystem, we have quite a direct control on how each player, just like what I mentioned of the tenant company, we can invest in so that we can induce the mindset shift and behavioral change among these social investors and social innovators. So even if on the right side, you can see last year we first time in Asia, we have formulate a sustaining loan that we got past the threshold of the bank system, how we set social value as one of the target for the banks to reduce their interest rate in our borrowings. So that's another aspect that we started to, I not say conquer, but we start to penetrate in terms of letting different parties understand social impact and social value. So on right, also then we are open to work with NGOs on these support, like training, like strategic advisory, measurement and report, and also program curation. So there's another SOIT as a service besides the net positive lease, the tenant program, and then is the SOIT consultancy. And if you are have interest to learn more about what we do, we have the report. This is the link, and also we are happy to keep the dialogue going on LinkedIn or on emails or whenever you think interested. Yeah, that's the initial sharing from me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Garrick, for sharing. Before I hand it over to Prof. Carlo for his guest respondent response, maybe you can touch on, Garrick, on two things. Number one is how in the Hong Kong context, how do you collaborate with nonprofit and social enterprise currently? Because the strong networks that both MySDG Academy and BFF has in KL and the Malaysian Philippines respectively are very deep ingrained in the community side. So what's the current collaboration like in Hong Kong, just for their context? And then secondly, maybe you can talk a bit about the life sciences. You have both the Nan Fung NF Trinity, the investment arm, and also the NGO, which is the Hong Kong Life Sciences Society, plus also the Mills Fabrica. I think just some context, because I think your Mills Fabrica, you also have you do investments globally as well. Some of them is ag tech as well. So maybe just to contextualize, because I guess the audience in both in the room and also online would like to see what are the touch points between what you do and also what they're currently doing as well.
Okay, so I will share more about the thesis. And maybe I will invite Crystal to share. Maybe Crystal, you can pick one or two collaboration with NGOs, how we're supporting them. So I'll go first. For the thesis, actually, there are two streams of theses within our ecosystem. One is, as Phil mentioned, is Mills Fabrica. They are investing in technology and lifestyle and agri-food related ventures. And that's they operating in the heritage building that we just mentioned. And they in the investment memos and in the process of decision making, they put impact as a core part of how they consider that can be an impactful and festival ventures. So they have a team sourcing from Asia and also from Europe, because they have a branch in London. So they have invested in different theses in the themes that I just mentioned. For the life science part, as called Pivotal, is sourcing pharmaceutical life science ventures in the New York, Boston area, and also in Shanghai, and also occasionally in London. So that's another theme that those are targeting those life science new products and treatments, and they have so far invested, I think, tens of startups already. And on the other side, they also invest in life science equities. So that's the part. And I think these are the business process that how they also include impact themes into their investment thesis. So I think, but those part I not directly work on. That's the high level I can share. So Crystal, share more about how we work with NGOs.
Yeah, sure. So if you guys can look at the screen, there's you can see a lot of different logos. So our approach really is both top down and bottom up in terms of searching for different partners to collaborate on when it comes to social impact measurements. For locally in Hong Kong, we do work with a lot of sports associations who have educational program, but we also work on a wide range of social topic on elderly, mental health, mental well-being, and also other more specific topic like financial literacy and etc. So a lot of the times when NGOs approaching us for collaboration, they're looking for like impact measurement specific like techniques, because in Hong Kong as a sector, for peers, you guys from Malaysia context, the journey itself is still like on a very like early stage. A lot of them is very used to like reporting output instead of reporting outcomes. So when it comes to like the program outcomes mappings and also how to convert the outcomes into some quantifiable metrics and even like social values, we do share like our approach from the UK market to the Hong Kong market via the consultancy part of services. But also like from the bottom-up approach, we also work with like Family Foundation in Hong Kong from a funder perspective to seeing like how they want to strategize with local NGOs when it comes to like target settings. Instead of just putting like on output target settings, we also collaborate with them in terms of like setting how they want as a program to achieve on different levels of outcome as well.
Thank you, Crystal. So I've given I guess a soft call ready to Carlo. So with that, I'd like to briefly shift gears to pass it on to Carlo for his comments and response to the presentation. And for the audience, for the participants online and also on site, please prepare your questions. Let's really treat this as a more of an interactive based dialogue. With that, I'll pass it to Prof. Carlo for his response.
Thanks, Philo, for inviting me over and for us to be able to represent our organization, Bayan Family of Foundations, in this regional dialogue. For context, I really make it a point to join these kinds of online interactions because if I remember correctly, Philo, we met each other in one back in during the COVID days. I found out that while Philo was presenting, he was a Filipino based in Hong Kong, so I messaged him directly, and then the partnership or the collaboration between Bayan and Asia Value Advisors started from there. And with Zoel, our friend from Malaysia, although it wasn't an online interaction preliminarily, it was through an on-site conference. But again, we reached out to each other. And much of the interaction is through these kinds of online discussions or fora, as we are in separate countries. So thank you very much for inviting us over. Probably as a matter of to directly respond to the short presentation of Garrick with regard to creating shared value and how it's being applied within the context of Nan Fung, I'd like to share 3 points. One is with regard to CSR, CSV, ESG, etc., etc. You can mix the entire set of alphabets into the kind of framework that you may be doing within the context of your conglomerate. That's one. The second one is with regard to the spectrum, probably, of depth of practice of CSV, CSR, or whatever it is that's being practiced within the context of a corporation or even a conglomerate. And probably last but not the least would be one case that I can highlight within the context of the Philippines, particularly where we in Bayan Family of Foundations would be directly involved. So probably in the first case, right? Again, this is something that we're directly exposed to as Bayan Family of Foundations, as a non-stock, non-profit organization based in Manila, primarily because of our positioning as a servicer of servicers, right, in the context of the Philippines. And to that extent, we're quite similar to Suwit consultancy in what it aims to do. But as a servicer of servicers, aside from being engaged by different sectors, including the public sector, other third sector actors, and in this case, the private sector actors or the big businesses, they actually engage us to design or co-implement or sometimes even implement in full their CSR programs or their CSV initiatives, or whatever they may call it in the context of their operations. So in that regard, we've encountered the notion of creating shared value or corporate social responsibility, or ESG, and so on and so forth, and how it's framed in different corporations. But in terms of outcomes, I would like to believe that the end result that they're intending to deliver is the same. It's really generating impact for the communities or the catchment areas of their operations or the supply chains that they're catering to. In fact, I attended this, I always share this example as a means to see the kind of exchange that's being done as regards the subject matter. So I attended this conference in San Francisco a while back, and it was participated by global actors on the impact sector, impact investors, corporations practicing CSV, CSR, even your nonprofits would be there, the academy would be there. And these are all experts, more than 2,000 experts in that. And for the week-long design of that particular conference, the only discussion point was, in all of those sessions organized in 5 days, the only discussion point was to continue ESG or not, right? To continue ESG or not. Is it still relevant or not? And then there were those sessions that actually relayed this side's argument, that side's argument. Of course, the corporate sector would have their arguments, and the two sides were actually reflecting on wait, ESG with its hundreds of indicators from the ESG advocate perspective. It's the discussion is now being done precisely because we have ESG in place, right? And to some extent, the decades worth of work that we've done is effective because of that. Without the work on ESG, for example, we wouldn't be discussing this in the first place now. On the other side of the spectrum, some advocates are saying, well, if you look into the hundreds of indicators, at the end of the day, what impact are you really measuring, right? If you look into one, is it really delivering a concrete, tangible impact at the level of the individual in the community or even at the community level, right? So that's the extent of exchange that's being done. And these are experts from the different side of the spectrum. So I guess my point in sharing that is there are a lot of frameworks, there are a lot of names into it, but for as long as the impact is concretely measured and is actually delivered, I guess that should be okay. That should be okay, right? And I guess CSV is one of the more effective frameworks to take on from a corporation standpoint, from a conglomerate perspective. Second is with regard to the spectrum of adoption of the practice. In our case, our experience has shown us that on the left-hand most side of the spectrum, there would be those practitioners, corporations, who are just merely doing it for legal compliance, right? For legal compliance. And there would be advocates that would say that's creating shared value. To some extent, that's corporate social responsibility because in complying, we are actually delivering the intended impact. But our school of thought is it's not. It's legal compliance. Without the law, you would not have been doing that in the first place, right? And then there's the middle part wherein they're doing something more than what's legally required of them, but it's not yet strategically or intrinsically woven into the business model, right? And then there's the extreme right side part wherein in designing whatever program it is that they're going to implement, they've fully considered the direct impact into the business model, whether it be just financially, whether they consider the people, the planet, or even the SDGs in general. It's intrinsically or strategically connected to the business model. So that's the spectrum of adoption that we've seen here in the Philippines. Last but not the least would be a local case that we've worked on that I think provides a complex and nuanced practice of CSV, CSR, or sustainability in general in the corporate or conglomerate setting. And this is something that we're doing with the Ayala Group of companies. So just a caveat, I'm not representing the Ayala Group of companies. I'm just going to share our own first-hand experience as a partner of their various subsidiaries in the context of their own delivery of creating shared value, because their patriarchs or their leaders, the Ayala family, is a stark advocate of CSV. And to some extent, the sustainability practices within the conglomerate is really a manifestation of how they intended that practice to be adopted throughout their conglomerate. So for context, Ayala has been around for a little less than 200 years. From what I remember, by 2034, they would be 200 years already as a conglomerate. They started out as a distillery, manufacturing or producing gin back in 1834. And they actually established the first commercial bank in the entire Southeast Asian region. So that was in the 1850s. And that bank is now the Bank of the Philippine Islands, right? And they've managed to start subsidiaries in many industries that are now industry leaders, right? So from my experience with them, they have this foundation, the Ayala Foundation. And in our interactions with them, the Ayala Foundation is not really orchestrating all the sustainability practices of the entire conglomerate. They would have their own focus areas, right? And the different subsidiaries would have their own manifestation of sustainability programs, CSR. Some of them would have foundations, some of them would not have foundations. Some of them would just purposively integrate sustainability practices in the corporation's operations. So that's to say, you won't see a particular unit that would be named after CSR, sustainability, or et cetera, et cetera. So in the context of their almost 2 centuries long of operations, it has matured to that each subsidiary would have its own identity, right? And in our interaction with some of them, for example, in the banking sector, of course, that would be financial inclusivity, right? In the telecom sector, that would be digitalization and digital entrepreneurship, for example. In energy, it would be community development in the context of their power generation areas as a means of community relations. So it would have different concrete manifestations, and probably that's part of the reason why a conglomerate-wide unified CSV adoption is quite complex and challenging, and that's why they're approaching it from subsidiary to subsidiary. But nevertheless, in a program that we're involved in, and this is where I think the partnership with MySDG Academy and APPGM comes in, Zoel has mentioned the ASEAN roadmap for the social and solidarity economy. So we're doing a local version, but this time around focusing on social enterprise development, wherein we're really harnessing the efforts of the private sector, the public sector, and the third sector to develop social enterprises. And in that regard, that's really a concrete case of the social and solidarity economy in action. Our work with the Ayala Group is to engage their different sustainability programs, CSR programs, such that it can be connected to social enterprise development. The main logic is that social enterprises would be integrated into their supply chains or even the market chains, so that, for example, given my first discussion point a while ago, if they're into ESG measurement, and they are, it would be easier for them to track their ESG progress because their supply chains are compliant with the ESG indicators already. So that's our main value proposition for getting them engaged in social enterprise development. So in that regard, we're able to harness the support of different conglomerates in different industries so that together we can collectively push for the development of social enterprises. And that's a means for us to get the other subsidiaries of the Ayala Group on board. And it was purposive on our part to work with Ayala Group in the first phases of this program implementation because we said we cannot get other conglomerates to join in if we can't tell them or we can't show them that it has already happened in our own backyard. But we are now in the process of onboarding other conglomerates through our partnership and the upcoming partnership with the UN Global Compact Network Philippines, wherein members would be other conglomerates here in the Philippines. Probably last but not the least would be a point on a challenge or a set of some challenges that we've encountered in dealing with such a case here in the Philippines. Of course, I've shared that the systemic conglomerate-wide adoption is challenging because of the nature of the individuality of the subsidiaries, right? I guess that's something that I actually saw as a strength within the Nan Fung Group. So it's something that is adopted systematically throughout the ecosystem. But in cases, in our case here in the Philippines, when we pushed for that adoption, we encountered the challenge because each would have its own language of sustainability. Each subsidiary would have its own language of sustainability. Last but not the least would be leadership changes, I think. Because in the context of one subsidiary, for example, of the Ayala Group, this is the Ayala Land, which in turn would have its own subsidiaries depending on the brands that they're pushing for. Ayala Hotels and Resorts, Ayala Malls, and so on and so forth, that would have brand presence all over the country. Previously, they had this program called Alagang Ayala Land. Alaga is a Filipino word for care. So that's to say, Ayala Land Cares or something like that. So they used that program as a means to onboard all these subsidiaries, and it to some extent it became effective for us to get in touch with all the subsidiaries through that. But in a snap of a finger, there was a leadership change, and Alagang Ayala Land was excluded from their performance indicators. So in that transition, although there would be advocates within the subsidiary in as far as their representation in our effort is concerned, because it's not explicitly integrated or recognized as a performance indicator, it's now a nice to do thing on their day-to-day. It's not something that's required of them. And given that, of course, you would expect that participation or active participation would wane. But then again, we're in the process of identifying. So now, what would be the program anchor so that we can effectively get them on board again? So just some challenges I can think of. And those are the 3 points. And I guess hopefully I added some value with the sharing of Garrick.
Thank you, Carlo. So, Garrick and Zoal, this is a respondent plus, a lot of context, specific context. So, I appreciate that, Carlo. So, Garrick and Zoal, since you're on site and you can read the temperature in the room, I've already asked the audience, the participants online, to put into the chat box if they have any questions. Do you have any questions for each other and or any response to what Carlo has mentioned or any follow-up points that maybe Zoel may want to add or questions for Garrick? Now is the open Q&A time.
In the chat box. Let me see anyone writing in the chat box.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I can see a lot of synergy in this discussion. Just now, Prof. Carlo saying about the Ayala, Malaysia is also entering a Kasih Malaysia time. So we are in the right time, right place, and also we have a right platform now. Everyone carry different resources. So how we can move forward without wasting the potential, right? Now we have a common goals, and everyone is doing quite significance in their own portfolio and space. How we can come together and move forward? Yeah. Is there any that we can think of? Because it's quite actually it's quite, how to say, the challenge is too many things happening. People cannot focus. Right. Yeah. So how do you attract them?
Yeah, I think for us it's really the very critical day-to-day questions that we ask ourselves, what we should focus and prioritize. So echo what Carlos mentioned about his 5-day conference. Only question is talk about whether we continue ESG or not. For us, it's really honestly I think most of the boardrooms of the companies in Hong Kong, they are discussing whether to keep the head of ESG, head of sustainability, keep the account or not. So I guess it's a very natural. You can say from survival of the sustainability professional, or it's the only way forward that we think is how we ask what sustainability and impact or the NGO partnerships can provide value to the companies down the road. And if we find that shared value sweet spot, we will be able to get the funding, get the management buy-in, get the management attention. And why I shamelessly say that profit and impact needs to go together. It maybe 5 years before we can just say, we need to do good, we do the right thing, then there will be budgets because of ESG, something like that. But now we need to remind ourselves that we are actually using shareholders' money. Of course, stakeholders is also in the value chain, but the shareholders, you can say it's a hygiene factor. The basic intention of the existence of the capital is basically to provide the profit stream first, and then it's up to us, the ESG practitioner who can still survive in this era, is to find that sweet spot, the shared value sweet spot, which Carlo mentioned. I believe there are many blue oceans. Just that before our mindsets are separating two worlds. But if we think at the start, just like before, many innovation, many technologies, before they happen is different world. But now we understand, we acknowledge the new normal of sustainability and business integration, and then we would design things that can deliver both. Is the way to go for us.
Got it. Any questions from Carlo to Garrick and Zoel and vice versa?
Questions? Probably for Zoel, none, because we've been working for 2 years already. For Garrick, well, you're in Malaysia now, right? So what would be, probably it's also for me, what would be the strategic direction of Nan Fung in terms of the Southeast Asian region? The reason why I ask this is that we've tried to go out to, for example, to Hong Kong, to Malaysia, not for us to operate outside of the Philippines, but to get to know possible collaborators for the work that we're doing in the Philippines. Right. So to the extent that we have a common denominator in as far as the Philippines would be concerned, and I guess I am speaking on behalf of some of the fellow Filipinos who are in the room, what's in store between Nan Fung and the Philippines?
Yeah, I think definitely looking for more collaborations and learning deeper honest sharing and learning how we progress in each of our location and operating market. Because I think for us, we see in UK, because we have properties in UK, that they already
Sorry, I think
I think
Garrick
the
was
reception
muted.
can't hear. Yeah, it was muted for a while. Sorry.
Now okay? Now okay? Now okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that we have properties in UK, so that we heard the story of their Social Value Act, which was legislated like 12, 13 years ago. that both the conservative and the both parties of the political parties, they join hands to get that legislation passed, so that in government procurement and also many government-related approvals, including the property, real estate development approvals, they need to mandate the quantification of social value. And then that goes after the open source data, financial proxies for different social issues, different location-based deprivation index on the materiality. Those infrastructure and system develop in place in a decade. So come back to Asian market, which we may have different stories that we may not have that legislation in place already, but we can see the possibility. So we are very hungry to learn how each of different markets, what's lacking, what's the building blocks that's lacking in each market, and how the leading players and the passionate individuals are driving those building blocks, and how we can support each other in this each location-based policy level or the building blocks building, ecosystem building challenges. I think we are in this stage. And in Hong Kong, where I operate and learn for 20 years, I think we really need cross-location collaboration. So that's why I'm really open to collaborate, learn, share our knowledge. I'm sure we have a lot we can support each other in this current status.
Yeah. Zoe, you're about to say something?
Yeah.
I would say that it's just very timely. In fact, APPGM also replicated APPG system is from the UK as well.
Oh, okay.
So the bipartisan ideology. And now we are entering to our 7 years, and MySDG as the outreach arm, we really want to see how to involve private sectors in this social value chain. And thank you very much, and I hope that you're hungry, and I am keen to invite this partnership and see how to use us as a case study and to see what happened. And of course, we have a lot of good partners in the chat box. They are not showing face, but they are quietly listening and see the number is increased. They are observant, and I believe that when we are ready, we are clear of how we want to move forward. I think they are a force that would like to learn the system and how it works.
Yes. I'd like to also add 2 more points before. I think for the participants, you have one or two more questions. Please feel free to add, because we will finish at 1:30 sharp. I just want to mention 2 points. Number 1 is that even within the impact investing ecosystem building space. So in the Philippines, for example, I think so Philippines, BFF, care of represented by Carlo and Prof. Carlo and Prof. Mike, there are members of the GSG task force that is trying to create the national partner arrangement in the Philippines as well. So BFF is focused on the demand side. There's also on the supply side, which is represented by other organizations. Vivian Tier, who's Malaysian, she is based in Hong Kong. She is active in Hong Kong for the task force for the development of a similar task force, as is Garrick and myself as well. So, but it's not a matter of just being a participant for these development. It is a recognition that the more we collaborate, the more we understand each other's respective spaces, that enables us to then nudge and advocate for our respective stakeholders that we care about, that we have a closer connection to, policymakers, whatnot, in getting the better sense of the market size for the supply side situation, whether philanthropic funding or impact investing or sustainable funding. That's on the supply side, which Garrick on the corporate side can advocate for. Garrick's colleagues from the Hong Kong Life Sciences Society and also the Mills Fabrica, they cannot just fund everything by themselves, but they also need to go for collaboration partners, even including with the Hong Kong government. So that's on that side. And the other side I would like to add to is that as we try to figure out the funding landscape is always, especially on the commercial side, Garrick's role and the supply side role is super important in sharing with their peers on the supply side as to what is the market size, the addressable market size that is actionable that can be directly tapped into and mobilized at the community level, which both MySDG Academy and BFF will be very strong in connecting to. And the themes from a funding side, where they're framing it as financial inclusion, resiliency, whether gender lens, whatnot, those are very important signals that the community side will need to hear from, so that as you do your respective work on the demand side, you then retag your impact that will resonate with the funders. And that's where the ecosystem can be built, because without such dialogue, without such conversation, we won't really know how big the market is, and we won't really know how we can measure and manage impact accordingly, however which way we frame it, as Prof. Carlo has mentioned as well. So that's why I think, well, with this dialogue, hopefully we can have more of these similar dialogues. And feel free to, I think, Garrick, to spread the word with your contacts on the corporate funder side as to what's happening in the individual countries, because between Zoel and Carlo and the other participants who are now in this room listening as well, they themselves and also know of first-hand, first-degree contacts of organizations that will benefit from sharing their respective work as well. Maybe I'll stop there for now. Any Crystal, any reactions or comments or questions? And I think there's a few people here. I would not want to cold call. You know who you are, so feel free. Let's try to wrap up in the next 10 minutes, and we'll just end at 1:30 sharp.
I saw a fabulous questions from the chat room actually. Michael was asking if, like, Garrick, do you think like our system and structure in Nan Fung in terms of the shared value can be franchised and replicate in Malaysia as well? So I guess it would be a really interesting question for us to also think about our direction ahead. So what do you think?
I think that's a question for Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer first, because they are driving this in multiple locations, like in US, in Australia, in Europe, and they have different chapters driving this creating shared value. So I am one of the benefits who took the Harvard course that directly taught by Michael Porter and Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, and so I think they are advocating for corporates too. That's a strategy, business strategy, not a CSR or a philanthropy strategy. So of course we are open to share with any corporates you think they want to embark on the same journey. We officially have the share value department in Nan Fung. So that's and I have set one share value department also in another large conglomerate in Hong Kong before. And we are open to share how the transformation can be, and what's the mindset shift, and what's the necessary, I say, building blocks, what are the necessary building blocks for each corporate to do that, and we are open. So any of the companies you can refer to us, or we can share. Yeah.
Thank you for that one, and thanks, Crystal. I wasn't paying attention to the chat box. I was so I missed that. I see you asked the first question. I will just recap the two other questions. Question by Tahir: what particular sector will be attractive to corporate sector for collaboration with social enterprise or CSOs, such as energy, food security, poverty, inequality, environment sustainability, etc.? How do firms relate closely to national policies and priority? That's the first question. And the second question was addressed to Professor Carlo. Could you share one example of an SE that scaled successfully through museum partnerships in Ayala Museum? And this is Ahmad, and here she's mentioned that I have been there in Makati participating in workshop. It's about Borneo and Philippine common heritage. In the interest of time, I would, any of you could respond briefly, just so we can finish on time, and then whatever we can finish, we can discuss. I guess address offline.
Yeah, I can briefly respond to the corporate preference right now. I think two perspective answering there. One is I just know Zoel's team and met some of her colleagues. I think how to answer what's the decision making for the priority issues, I think rests in the methodology of having the evidence-based information for decision. That means for us, real estate corporate, the major clusters of property that we operate in, we conduct location-based materiality assessment. And then we get those evidence and to help us decide that property cluster, which would be the most high priority issues for stakeholders. Like, is it mental health? Is it caregiving? Is it employment or recycling, different things? So we refrain from having a top-down, oh, it's in trend, boss like it, or just the legacy, and then we would do it. We would validate different hypotheses with the evidence. But that's one perspective. The other perspective, very short answer, would be AI. If you can have some application case for certain corporates to apply AI to deliver impact-related projects, because they see that AI transformation is a very, very critical and urgent priority for all corporates. So if you have those ideas, that would surely give you a yes very quickly. So, but we need to prove the practicality and application. Yeah.
Sounds good. Carlo, if it's okay, 1 or 2 more minutes for yours, but also closing remarks on your side, and then we'll have a photo for everyone. For those people who are okay to turn on your screen, we'll do that in the next 2-3 minutes. Carlo, closing for your side.
Yeah, probably as a direct response to the query of Hilda in the chat box, could you share one
Yes,
example of an SE that scaled successfully through museum partnerships in Ayala Museum? So I'll break down probably that question, and I'll ask you if you think I understood it correctly. As you said, successfully through museum partnerships, particularly in Ayala Museum. Now, for an SKI to scale successfully, there are different parameters. Do you mean to say successful impact-wise? Successful, because impact-wise, they can be just break-even and they'll be successful already. Or business model-wise, meaning to say, have they grown their business successfully? Either way, I think none of the two can be successfully achieved just by a partnership through a museum, and in that regard, Ayala Museum at that. Ayala Museum, I think, is a very niche market, foot traffic, displaying whatever product of, I don't think it's the intent of the museum to sell, right, to a large market base. So beneficiary, from a business standpoint, I don't think that can be achieved. From an impact perspective, they might be able to raise awareness through their products that can be displayed there regarding their advocacy. But in as far as scaling impact by just exhibiting a product there in the museum, I don't think that can be achieved either. As regards an SE that would have a product that's museum exhibit worthy, that has achieved success in some aspects, I think there would be some that had gone through a program within the Ayala Group, particularly with BPI Foundation. It's called Junknut, top of mind. Junknut, it's a social enterprise collecting solid waste from the coastlines here in the Philippines and translating it into award-worthy furnitures. So I guess that particular product is Ayala Museum display worthy, but it's not being sold in Ayala Museum. It's being sold elsewhere through malls, through other countries as a high-end furniture product line. Whether or not that success has translated to business growth is another question altogether.
Thank you, Carlo. With that, I think that we will wrap up with the official, session. Thank you, Garrick, Zoel, and Carlo, and Crystal, for all of your time. Can we, if it's okay with the online participants, whoever is comfortable can turn on the audio, the camera, and have a quick group picture. I will let Zoel and Safar to handle this as to how you want to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Philo, and thank you, Prof. Carlo, for very insightful sharings. All right. Okay, let's take a photos. I also want to see who is on the bar in the room. And just a quick teaser, because just now we did touch about the museum and also about the AI. So yesterday, MySDG Academy have a very fruitful discussion with Kementerian Perpaduan. If you are from Malaysia and seeing that museum is an avenue to leverage, and please let us know that we can continue to engage our need. If you are out of Malaysia and you are in the ASEAN network, I have asked Sapar to put in a link in the chat box, and you can join us and we see how to continue engage. I think the resources is there. It's just that how we can put in the effort to connect the dots. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's take
Photo.
a group photos together. Nice to meet all of you. Good to see your face. All right. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure if online we have this so-called freestyle. Usually in person we say 1 formal, 1 freestyle. All right. Okay. 1 freestyle. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. I'll say that this is a beginning point. So let's continue to engage. Let's see how we can connect through WhatsApp, online. And do join us next week. We will have a 2021. We will have our ASEAN SDG-SSE forum and hosted by the Philippine Secretariat and Prof. Carlo, Bayan, together with Dr. Bayan, working very hard background. Okay, over back to you, Phil.
Okay, thank you. So I will put, I will stay on, but everyone else, thank you for your time. Hope this was helpful, and hopefully this will go beyond the first experiment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'll stay behind first. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.